want to first of all thank everyone who spoke earlier this morning and kind of shared with us their journey and their story. My role today and what I want to share with you is really a little bit about Cornerstone and how we help our clients realize their potential, which is of course our tagline. And one thing that Suresh from Nestle said earlier that I think really struck me was he said, you know, it's about the power of technology, but the passion of people. And I think that really underscores Cornerstone and who we are and what we try to do with our clients to help all of our clients realize their potential, from the employee experience to the practitioner experience, that ultimately, of course, drives up to your organizational culture and how your organization can be successful. So I want to share with you a little bit about, again, kind of the Cornerstone story and who we are. And Frank, who is the SVP of our APJ region, he says, the best companies in the world create amazing experiences and empower employees to realize their fullest potential at work and at life. And that, I think, couples along with what Suresh said earlier, power of technology, because we believe that we have truly the most modern and advanced and best technology to help you drive the best candidate experience, the best employee experience, the best administration experience, but also the best learning experience, of course, for our employees, because we know that the war for talent management truly is about keeping people engaged, keeping people in your organization, growing them, making them successful, developing them. That's the way we want to kind of approach our employee experience. That's the way we, as practitioners, need to make sure that our employees stay with us and we retain the top talent. So what is the employee experience? So we definitely define this as connecting with people, as connecting with process and technology, and being able to make sure that those technologies can be used in real time. Technology is everywhere. We know this. We see software all over the world. Kind of, you know, it's shaping the way that we interact with one another. It's shaping the way that we interact with our daily lives. We all use Twitter, Instagram, PayPal, Google, etc. to drive the way that we interact with one another again, and kind of what we do to engage the world around us. And also in terms of using those technologies, we know that personalization is critical, right? So we have lots of different apps really help drive this personalization. We all use these kinds of technologies, these applications all the time, every day. We look at Airbnb, we look at Yelp for other recommendations from other people about what are good restaurants to go to, what are good hotels to go to, where should we go to have a good experience. So these kinds of software devices and applications are all around us. They're pervasive in our lives. We use them all the time, and we rely on feedback from one another in social and collaborative ways to drive, again, how we interact in these experiences, right? So that, of course, translates into what we as Cornerstone do to help drive that employee engagement experience for our users. Tell you a little bit about Cornerstone and kind of our trajectory and who we are and how we've come to be. Cornerstone was founded in 1999. And we really began kind of as a learning environment. So we were first called CyberU. And our mission really was to educate people. So really learning is the core crux of who we are. Providing learning platforms, learning applications, and learning content for our users really kind of began in terms of what we meant to do, how we set out. This transitioned us into overall talent management in the cloud space in 2001. Integrated talent management in 2005, and now you're going to hear that term integrated talent management all over the place. It's pervasive. Our competitors use this all the time, and we've actually kind of feel like we pioneered that term, but we've shifted, and now we use the term unified talent management. And the distinction here is because we have not integrated anything, so we have not purchased other applications, other software tools, and integrated them into our own. All of the stuff that we offer our clients, all the stuff that we offer our users has been developed in-house and organically by feedback and the drive of our clients and what they need, and listening to what is best practice in the market, listening to where the market is headed, listening to what our clients need so that we can respond to those needs in real time. So the term unified talent management, I think, is really critical for us because we really truly believe that all the different offerings that we offer integrate with one another seamlessly and are intrinsically related to one another. Social networking and talent management was another space that we pioneered in, and as well as the client success model. Now that's pervasive in most cloud or SaaS organizations, is kind of having that client success model, but that's something that we truly pioneered. We have a strong footprint in that space, a lot of different people working in that area to make sure that you as clients and you as potential clients become successful in everything that you do when you engage with Cornerstone. We then moved into consumerized talent management in 2012, and in 2014, big data and talent analytics, which I'm sure you've all heard about. These are kind of buzzwords in the industry. These are things that everyone needs to be aware of and how to use big data and analytics in effective ways to drive your talent management strategy. We have really, truly, I think, been pioneers in that space as well with all the data that we have available to share with you around kind of what you might want to think about for predictive analytics, to how to think about growing your workforce in those areas. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. So talking a little bit about the Cornerstone DNA and who we are. A moment ago, I mentioned that we kind of built all of our different offerings internally and organically, and that's really true. And it was all driven by really what our client needs. So we began with learning, as I mentioned, right? And it grew out to competency assessments. We had a client that purchased our learning platform and was using that content and said, you know what? It'd be great if when my employees went through these different learning modules and these different kind of learning contents, we could then translate that into understanding how did that impact their competencies. So we wanted to talk about competency assessments. We built that onto our platform. Then that began to talk about development planning. We had another client come to us and say, all right, we've got learning. Now we can assess competencies, but we need to figure out how to drive people who have gaps in their skills and what we can do to push them to get to the right skills that they need to have for their role. So development planning was another organic kind of next step from there. Then in terms of development planning, you have to think about, all right, well, if I've got a development plan, then I'm clearly going to have goals that will tell me what I need to do to better my own skill set, to get myself to the next level, to get myself to that next job. So goal planning and goal metric and goal management became kind of the next iteration there. And then, of course, that led us to performance reviews. We had a client come to us and say, okay, this is all great. We've got all this great data and information, but we need to find a way to actually review how our employees are performing on an annual basis and make sure that we understand really kind of what all these metrics mean, and that we can then, of course, direct them and guide them into how to improve their performance over the coming year. This then led inherently to succession planning. So you've got all this data, you know who your employees are, you know what their skills are, you know what their strengths are, so then you can start planning for who needs to be filling the next role and what next steps are for your employees, where they can go, where you can target them in their trajectory for their career. What is your talent pipeline? Who's available? Who's ready to go? Who might need further development before they can move to that next level, and then organically develop what that next level might look like? What's the plan to get them there? Talent assessments then, of course, became a natural progression from that. And then observation checklists. We had a retail client come to us and say, great, we have all this data, but we need to know how our employees are doing on the floor, how are they doing in the retail organization, how they're doing every day in their interactions with clients. So observation checklists became kind of the next step and obvious kind of iteration from there. This, of course, then led to recruiting. So now you have all this data. You know who your talent pool is. You know what you need for certain roles. You know the skills that you need. You know the skill gaps. So then you can start then looking for who is the next person we can bring into our organization, who's the right talent that we can bring in to meet our skill gap needs and to make sure that we have the right people in the right place. Which then led, of course, to onboarding. So when you bring people in, you have to have ways to get them up to speed on what your company culture is about, who you are as an organization, and how they can best drive their own success. Then, of course, we led to workforce planning. So another client came to us and said, you know what, all this data is great, but we need to know really what's coming down the pike for us and how we can best plan for this and what's the next step for us to make sure that our talent needs are met and we have everything in place. Analytics then came from that, which of course relies heavily on big data, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later. And then, of course, artificial intelligence, what I'm going to talk about in a moment as well, which really, of course, means that you've got kind of, all this learning content, all these development plans, and kind of if you're an employee, I want to go from here to here. And you kind of have this artificial intelligence and machine learning that will help dictate and drive and curate for you the content that you need to help your development goals be met so that you can reach that next step in your career. And then, of course, HR administration, of course, we, of course, have to manage all this data, keep all this data and all these metrics in-house so that we can know really what to do with it, and that of course led to that. And all of this, all these progressions, all these kind of next level organic iterations were truly driven by our clients. So you'll see a lot of logos up here of different client names that you'll probably recognize. And these are the clients who came to us, and from that initial core learning offering that we had, said, you know what, it'd be great if we grew in this way. It'd be great if we had access to this data. It'd be great if you offered this. And so truly, Cornerstone has been, from the beginning, an organization that truly thought about, all right, as Suresh said earlier, we're going to think about the power of technology and the passion of people. What do our clients need? And we're going to grow that direction, and we're going to meet those needs. And all of this came under the umbrella of the unified talent management approach and model that we hark to, and that we think is truly kind of our innovative and true kind of big hallmark and differentiator in the space rather. So thinking about how all these different pieces of the puzzle fit together so that you can retain and make sure that you have access to the right metrics with the right data so you can have the right people in the right job at the right time. Another kind of forum that we have to kind of collect this information is that we have what's called Suggestion City. So when our clients come to us and say, we have these needs, or we have this want in terms of functionality, or this enhancement request, clients will go to Suggestion City on the Cornerstone inside our module and inside of our tool, and they'll enter in kind of what it is that they would hope for in terms of an enhancement. What is it that they need? Where do they think that the module or the offering could be better served for them and for their purposes? So clients will go in and put in these suggestions and put in these enhancement requests. Other clients will see all of this, and they can go in and vote on, yes, we think this enhancement is critical, we want to do this, or no, this is maybe not so critical right now. They add in their own feedback in the form of comments to really say, we agree with this enhancement request, but we would also like it to do X, Y, and Z, right? So over the last year in 2016, we had 270 different suggestions given to us by clients in Suggestion City that we actually enacted and had come out as true enhancements within the Cornerstone module. So again, we are organically always listening to the needs, not only of the market and where the market trends are dictating that we go in terms of what we offer, but really what it is that our clients need. What do they want? Because we want to make sure that we're responsive to you first. And so basically from all of this came a lot of different offerings, right? So you'll see a kind of a smattering of different kinds of modules that we had at one point, right? We had succession management, we had analytics, we had edge, we had dashboards, certifications, insights, all of this. And we still have this, but we've realized that, all these different offerings are great, but we've got to maintain the simplicity of our offerings so that our users can really kind of understand how to best interact with what we offer in terms of our unified talent management suite. So we've really kind of parsed this down into 4 main modules: recruiting, learning, performance, and HR. And I want to drive a little bit and talk a little bit about kind of how all of this integrates with one another and how that can help you kind of make sure that your technology drives the engagement of your employees. So we know that employees want to say they work for a company that they respect. Employees want to say that they work for a company they are proud of working for, and that they have a social responsibility and mission kind of component of that. We know employees inherently typically want to stay in a role and get developed in that role, and they want to strive to do their best. They want to strive to achieve better. They want to strive to achieve that next level. They want to be developed. So how does technology drive that? And let's explore exactly how we do that. So first of all, I would like to talk a little bit about learning. So again, as I mentioned earlier, learning is kind of the core crux of kind of where Cornerstone began, and everything else has kind of been built off of that. But we want to make sure that learning never gets kind of replaced as a central core and central tenet to not only what we offer, but what we think is best for the culture of our organizations that we serve. Building a culture of learning and development is critical. And I think I saw a statistic recently from a study by Deloitte that said in 2016, the CEO's number one talent concern is learning and development. I think 71% of CEOs put that at the top of their talent management priority list for the year. So I'm sure that there'll be a new update to that in the next year, but I don't expect that percentage to really fall. I expect it to increase. If you've been thinking about or paying attention to white papers or trends out there in the human capital talent management space, it's all about learning and development, which is of course integrated with performance reviews, right? So keeping people engaged, giving them opportunities to develop themselves, providing them with all the different resources that you can so they can meet their development objectives is critical. And you have to have that culture of learning and development in place. And Cornerstone can help you do that either by looking and accessing content on a laptop or a desktop or a tablet or a mobile application. We have all that functionality. And the Cornerstone Learning Suite in 2016 had 360 different registrations of courses, so people going out and signing up for different classes within our suite, and 1.3 billion hours of content viewed. So truly, learning is still the critical core of what we do and who we are, and we want to make sure that our clients and our users and your employees and you as practitioners are engaged to offer that best-in-class service in the most modern way. We also need to think about, what does learning look like today? Learning has evolved over the course of the last 10, 15, 20 years, right? Back in the mid-90s, really it was all about classroom training. So you would go to a course somewhere, you would attend a conference, you would all go into your corporate headquarters and go through some type of training, right? That was really the only thing that was offered. Then we kind of went into e-learning. So a lot of companies were thinking, you know what, it's really expensive, it's really time consuming to have people come from all over the world to go through training courses or certification courses. So let's think about what we can do to supplement in-person learning. And that, of course, led us to e-learning. So e-learning kind of came on the rise and people began to supplement in-person training with online courses, then realizing that, you know what, they complement one another. So making sure that you have the access to the traditional instructor-led type of learning, but also that you as an employee can go out and have access to courses on your own time as you need them. And as that time approaches where you think, you know what, I need to learn this skill here, I have access to do that on my own in my own real time. So that blended learning concept truly emerged. Now we have social learning. So I think I saw another statistic recently where it said something like millennials, 82% of millennials believe that collaborative and on-the-job learning is the best form of learning, right? So we have a client, for example, that really kind of engages in that way. It's a retail organization. And what they do is the managers of the different retail organizations will go into our learning management suite and type in different role play scenarios of examples when they've had clients that they had to deal with or customers they've had to deal with in person that have been difficult, or employee relation scenarios where they've had difficult conversations with their employees and address behavioral or performance issues. And so they type up these different scenarios, then everyone gets together and talks through, how would you have handled this differently? What would you have done in this scenario to make it better? And they all kind of collectively learn from one another, learn from each other's kinds of issues or that they experience, and kind of all help one another to be better. Social learning, on-the-job learning through maybe skill assessments or job rotations or giving someone a special project. These kinds of social learning collaboration tools are becoming more and more increasingly popular, as well as crowdsourced learning. So we all, go on YouTube and maybe watch a video about how to do something, or watch a TED Talk, or go on LinkedIn and you'll see people reposting blogs or articles all over the place. So this type of crowdsourced learning from people that you trust, people that you feel are good influencers or mentors, is increasingly popular as well. So the evolution of learning is something that we've been paying attention to, and that Cornerstone has evolved in tandem with, to make sure that we keep in touch, of course, in abreast of what's happening in the marketplace. But learning itself has evolved as well. So, your learning used to be all about training. You'd have to go to a training because it was compliance-centric, or you'd have to do it to kind of meet some kind of goal that was given to you by a manager or by your organization. It was pushed out by your employer, and it was usually time-centered. So, for example, if I wanted to get a certification, many of the clients that we've worked with in the past say, you have to be at our company for 3 years before we'll pay for you to get a certification, or for 5 years before we'll give you tuition reimbursement. And they're all formalized kinds of learning concepts, right? So kind of more formal instructor-led courses, or going on to perform a certification, taking a test, and achieving a passing score. Well, learning itself has shifted, and Cornerstone has kept up with that shift. It's not necessarily about training anymore, about just kind of meeting the assessment and getting a score on a test. It's about learning constantly and learning to learn all the time. Always being engaged with the world around you, always being engaged with your role, thinking about how you can develop yourself to achieve that next level. And it's oftentimes employee-led rather than employer-pushed, right? So So if I, for example, have worked in compensation in the past, maybe I want to learn benefits. So I want to engage and own my own development. I want to go out and talk to my manager about how I can learn about benefits. I want to find out what kinds of courses, what kinds of videos, or what kinds of blogs or articles should I read to make sure that I get the skills so I can start working in a different area. And ongoing learning is critical. So getting rid of these kinds of tenure-based arbitrary timelines, right? So why do you have to wait for 3 years before your organization will pay for you to get a certification? Why do you have to wait 5 years before you'll get tuition reimbursement? The point is that we as organizations should be investing in our people right away all the time. These arbitrary timelines need to go away so that ongoing learning, ongoing development becomes really the paramount in our organizations and in our culture, because we want people to stay. We want people to be retained. We want to keep that top talent, and the way to do that is by developing them continuously in both formal and informal ways. We have to deliver tailored, personal, and relevant experiences in the age that we find ourselves in now, which is that we've got content overload. You can go out and find content everywhere. So how do we manage all this content and make it relevant for our employees and for our organizations? And what we at Cornerstone have done to answer this question is thought about two big consumer trends in the marketplace that I'm sure you're all familiar with. We really looked at how do people consume video and how do people consume audio. So Netflix and Spotify are really kind of our primary examples here that I'm going to talk a little bit about. But if you think about how you engage with Netflix, for example, you're going to look at, you go in Netflix and you're going to see these kinds of tabs that you'll see up on the screen here when you go into your home page, right? And it's all curated for you based on what you've already watched, based on what you've liked, based on what you've liked or kind of rated, right? So for example, I like crime movies or I like documentaries, right? So I'll watch something and then Netflix will kind of use its machine learning algorithms, its artificial intelligence to tell me other things in that kind of vein that I might also like to watch. And usually it's right? So Cornerstone has kind of thought about this and thought about how can we integrate that type of technology, that type of curatorial experience to drive people towards learning, to drive people towards what's next for them to help enhance their own careers. Spotify is a great example of how people are curating what it is that they're learning. So if you go on Spotify, for example, and you listen to a certain type of playlist or a certain type of music, Spotify will then kind of cultivate, what it is that you like. You can share your playlist with your friends. If you think, my friend John has great musical taste, and I know he likes this type of music. I'm going to see what he likes so I can learn about other types of musicians in that category, right? So I can share my playlist with one another. I can look at what my friends are doing. I can trust their advice. I can trust their kind of guidance because again, we are all using these kinds of collaborative and personalized experiences with how software drives what it is that we look at in terms of content. And Spotify then will pick up on what it is that I like to listen to, what other playlists I'm listening to, and curate new music for me all the time. So in that vein, Cornerstone has thought about, Netflix helps people figure out what they want to watch. Spotify helps people figure out what they might want to listen to. And again, it's usually pretty much on point, right? It's usually very, very close to what you might like, if not exactly. So Cornerstone has adopted this methodology. And so what you'll see here on the screen, on the left side of the screen, is kind of what you would look at in terms of what you might see as learning content suggested for you. You'll see the design is very much like the Netflix design, right? You have those kind of tiles that show you a little bit about each kind of different learning content that you might engage. And this is all available to you, again, via laptop or desktop or tablet or mobile, which we know is critical. We also want to make sure, of course, that everything's available in stream, so you can go look at it as you need to. Playlists are available for you, but thinking about the content itself. So where does this content that Cornerstone is curating for me come from? That content comes from a myriad of sources. But one source, of course, is proprietary content. Your content. You as an organization may have specific content that you need to share with your employees and your populations within your organization. So you can put this content, whatever that may be, in terms of courses or video, etc., onto the Cornerstone module so that people can go out and look at the proprietary content that you as an organization has deemed critical for your population. You've got open source content. So maybe I want to go watch a video on YouTube. Maybe I want to go read an article on LinkedIn, etc. So you have those types of content as well. And then, of course, you've got all kinds of different tutorials on YouTube, for example, that you might want to look at, and then of course professional content. So Cornerstone partners with all these different vendors who provide professional content like TED Talks, like JJ Keller, etc., so that you as an organization can have access to not only the proprietary content that you've deemed critical and necessary for your organization, all the open source content that we have access to from all over the world, YouTube, LinkedIn, etc., and this professional content of academic and peer-reviewed types of articles and information and videos like TED Talks and JJ Keller. So you can kind of turn on a switch and all of a sudden everybody in your organization, all your learners have access to all these different modes of content. And basically the Cornerstone module, based on what it is that they like, what it is that they've decided that they need, what development plan might be in place for them, will help curate what the next learning objectives might be for any given employee. So you've got all this content, right? And our catalog synchronization service will basically make Cornerstone your content hub. And this would be something kind of like, what it would look like if you logged in, the Cornerstone Learning Experience, we call it. So you have the tiles that will show you, much like Netflix does, a little bit of information, a small blurb about what each different content module might look like. You've got ranking in terms of stars, because we all want to make sure that we get that personalization right. We all want to make sure that we understand what other people are saying about a certain content. Maybe a 5-star content might draw our attention more than a content with 1 or 2 stars. So all this type of different offering is available to you, as well as everything is always responsive, right? So regardless of whether I'm looking at it on a tablet, if I'm looking at it on a phone, if I'm looking at it on my laptop or a desktop, I've got the access to all the different content responsive in the most modern way possible, and with access at my fingertips whenever I as a learner deem that I need that access. So Cornerstone Learning is not just a learning management system, it's also an experience platform. So I, as an employee, can go in and say, you know what, I want to learn this and I've got access to this at my fingertips. Or based on what I've decided I want to go in terms of my next steps in my career, here's all this curated content that will help me get there or help me attain the skill gaps that I need and close those skill gaps so that I can be best prepared for my next role. And all of this is really going to help us in terms of what employee expectations are. We know that they have changed. 44% of employees, according to a Burson by Deloitte survey last year, say that they expect to leave their job within the next 2 years. And this harkens back to, again, what Suresh said earlier. Millennials are changing their job every 4.6 years, I think was the statistic that he mentioned. So 44% of people, millennials that were surveyed by Burson said, you know what, in the next 2 years, I probably will leave and go somewhere else. 63% of the same people surveyed said, you know what, my skills are not being developed. Maybe they wouldn't leave if their skills were being developed or they had access to formalized development plans. And 29% say they feel that they have no control over their career path. So by helping enabling learning, by instilling a culture of learning and development, you can help mitigate a lot of these kinds of pain points and help meet the expectations of employees who know that maybe they want to stay, maybe they would stay longer if they had the opportunity to grow and develop their career within your organization. So being cognizant of that, being aware of that, and making sure that you offer people the right type of learning experience is critical, because learning and performance are inherently linked, right? So we know that the secret weapon to ensure engagement and win the talent war for people, to retain people, is truly by making sure that you give them the opportunities that they need, the opportunities that they want to grow themselves, to develop their own careers. And one way we do that in Cornerstone is by assessing competencies. So if I have a certain job, then I know what my competencies are for that job, and I can kind of use this competency assessment model to track where are my skill gaps, what do I need to maybe beef up so that I can get that promotion, so I can move to the next level, so I can kind of have the next roll down in terms of my career. Development plans are also critical, right? So I've decided that I want to, or I have some kind of areas that I need to develop in terms of what my own personal skills or gaps are in my role, and before I move to the next level, maybe I have to attain some more skills, some more knowledge. So formalized development plans help me do that. They map out exactly what I need to do to get to where I want to go, and then in the Cornerstone platform, can kind of track that. And Cornerstone's machine learning will also help you kind of be empowered to understand what your recommended path might look like. So based on the way that other people in your organization have moved from role to role, the Cornerstone machine learning kind of application will allow people to say, you know what, most people from my role go to this next job, or here are some other jobs I might want to consider as I think about moving down my own career path. But what we do know is that the status quo is not working right now. So performance management is in crisis. And the big trend right now is to think about performance management in tandem with development, as I mentioned earlier. So there are lots of trends out there in terms of performance management. You've probably heard people talking about going to a ratingless performance management system or having more frequent check-ins throughout the year rather than that one time per year manager and employee sit down and kind of go over the performance of the employee over the course of that year. We know that this is not working. We know that people are changing the way they approach performance management and the frequency with which they have these kinds of conversations. 71% of people say that their performance management processes are not effective. 64% of organizations say that coaching for development is a critical need. And 52% of organizations say that we've got to start linking the individual performance goals to our organizational goals so that we can be successful, so that we can, again, keep people, make sure that they're successful, so ultimately our organization will be successful as well. And performance management, as I mentioned, is becoming more and more a critical topic. It's a hot button issue out there. So maybe going ratingless does not work for your organization, but the frequency of conversations with which managers and employees are having to talk about their employees' performance is increasing. This is a trend that we don't think is going to go anywhere, right? So we've enacted what we call Cornerstone Conversations, which allow managers to have more formalized, captured kind of input as how their employees are progressing and tracking over the course of any given year. And this is critical because as you think about it, there truly is a misalignment with how we think about the health of our organization and the health of our talent. If I'm a CEO, I'm not going to set goals for my organization in January and then not check in on them until the next January. No. I'm going to be checking in on different aspects of my organization all the time, all throughout the year. Product development, finance, etc. As a business leader of a division or an organization, I'm always going to keep my finger on the pulse of how my organization is doing. Maybe I need to course correct, or maybe I need to change direction at some point throughout that year. So the question becomes, why do we take that approach with our talent, which is arguably our most valuable resource, right? So if I'm going to set goals in January, right now it's October. Maybe the goals I set in January no longer make sense for me because business needs always change. The priorities that we have in our jobs always change for a myriad number of reasons. So these more frequent conversations, these more frequent check-ins allow managers and employees alike to recalibrate their goals throughout the year and say, you know what, I set these goals in January, now it's October. Maybe I set 6 goals. Maybe 3 of them are still valid, 3 of them are not. But if I'm going to be judged and measured against them in terms of my performance review and my compensation, I want to make sure the goals I'm being measured against are accurate and timely. So more frequent conversations enabled by a tool like Cornerstone Conversations will allow that kind of interaction, will allow that feedback. And again, more frequent check-ins in terms of the way that we manage our employees' performance is a trend that we don't think is going to go anywhere. We know that employee engagement is in crisis. There's 63% of people worldwide say they're engaged in their job, and the Indian statistic is a little higher. 68% of employees say that they're engaged in their job. These are not high enough numbers. So what are we going to do to fix that? We have to engage our employees. We have to give them development and learning opportunities. We have to constantly be able to check in with them about their performance, their needs, and make sure that we strategize about giving them the best talent experience that we possibly can so we can retain the best talent. And we do offer tools to help you do that. In Cornerstone Engage is a way that we can have engagement surveys that you can share with your employees. It's also, we can do this via kind of quick pulse surveys via the mobile application. So there are lots of ways that we can help you check in throughout the year on the general employee engagement of your organization. I mentioned earlier big data, and this is something that we really are looking at, really kind of putting a lot of effort and resources into in big data and data analytics. We've got 3,000 clients, 32 million users. We operate in 192 countries and in 43 languages. So we've got access to a lot of data, and we use that data in many different ways. To predict compliance, you can use this to predict learning popularity, so what learning content might be best suited for your organization and for certain different populations. We use this to predict succession and readiness, so we know what employees might be best suited for the next step or the next level of job. We can predict succession and readiness as well by saying, you know what, this is someone who's an implementation consultant. They want to be a regional sales manager. We've had 24 people in our organization go from that job to this job And it typically takes someone between 2 and 10 years. On average, it takes them 4 years. So we can help people understand what are the roles that might be next for them, what is the timeline that they should be thinking about in terms of how to get from one spot to the next, and we can then say, you know what, we can predict your career path and what your growth might look like. So in this example, we've got a guy named Otto, and you'll see all the different kinds of career paths that might work for him. And these different lines and the thickness of the line indicate the more frequency someone has moved from this job to the next. So what job might be best suited for this employee? And then thinking about how to develop action plans to make sure that they can figure out what it is they need to do to get from job A to job B. What skills do I need to make sure that I have? What do I need to do to make sure that I get there? Development plans I'll work on with my manager, and we'll check in consistently to make sure that I'm progressing against those goals. Also, as a manager, using these predictive analytics capabilities, I can recommend successors. So if I've got someone who's maybe being promoted and I need to know who's going to fill that person's job, or someone who's left to go to another company, who am I going to use internally to fill that person's job? Well, maybe I know a handful of people in my organization that can do that, but predictive analytics and our different benchmarking software and the way that we use big data can say to that manager, you know what? You've got these 5 people that you know of, but here are 10 other people that you may not know of who are ready for that job, and maybe you should be considering them as well. And another way that we use big data is benchmark. And benchmark is the way that you as an organization can compare yourself against other organizations of the similar size, scope, or industry. So you can say, you know what, typically the tenure of someone in my organization or organizations like me is 3.5 years. We have 86% of training completion rate. So we can kind of compare yourself in many different ways to other organizations of the similar size and scale of your own using those big data predictive analytics that Cornerstone has. And so with that, I'm just going to wrap up and say, you know, thank you to all of our customers and partners. Right now, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we've got 130 customers across the APJ area with over 2 million users, 285 employees Cornerstone has across the region in 7 different countries and 8 offices. Particularly here in India, we have 540 different customers. Now, some of those are India-based, some of those are global companies who have an Indian presence. We have 150 employees here in India alone in 3 different offices, and we've been here in India for 6 years. So we're committed to make sure that we have a presence in APJ and that we can help you realize your potential using all the different offerings that we have to make sure that your employee experience, your experience as a practitioner is all up to par, and that we can, of course, realize your potential in all those different kinds of facets so that ultimately your organization can continue to be successful, and we look forward to the opportunity to help you do that. So with that, if we have any questions, happy to take them.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Santosh. I work with a company called CG Power. Earlier, we were known as a Crompton Greaves Limited. So my question is related to the benchmarks that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So for benchmarks, basically, you need to have data of the peers.
Yeah.
And how do you actually get this data if there is a confidentiality clause actually is inbuilt?
Well, so it's not, so the data that we have is all based on the clients that we have in the region, right? You can access that by matching yourself against certain industries or different scopes in terms of revenue size or the geographic footprint or number of employees, et cetera. And you won't be able to see exactly what are the companies and who it is that you are comparing yourself against. You'll get kind of a sample size, but it won't be anything specific. So you'll say, in general, you've got 5 companies that fit these parameters, and here's the data around those companies. Yeah. So it's not, we're not like, you know, sharing your data. We're not sharing information around you. It's very at a high level. It's aggregated based on, you know, other factors, but it wouldn't be kind of, you know, this is this company's information. This is how many employees they have. This is what their retention rates look like. It's not down to that granular level. It's more high level and aggregate. So with that, I'll say thank you so much. I appreciate your attention. I know it was a long morning, and I hope you learned a lot. I certainly did, and I hope that you'll have a good rest of your day, and thanks everyone for coming and for your attention.